Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoteric Podcast, episode 96, in which I interview visionary artist Adam Scott Miller. But first, transformations and footnotes. This is the segment in which I read my father's book. This is Transformations by John Dan Reeb, 1976. Chapter 4, Verse 2. It's all been done before, acted out before, laughed at before, taken seriously before, made war over before, made peace over before, institutionalized before, understood before, misunderstood before, rebelled against by oncoming generations before, and then done again in exactly the same way, but somehow differently enough to start the whole cycle rolling again, before. Verse 3. I've even told you what I'm about to tell you before. The eggheads and theologians will have fun putting significance upon this as they have before, won't they? Verse 4. Once before I achieved certainty about journeying, I had a dream. I don't know what it was, except that I remember it was very, very boring. Something turgid and undigested properly. The body stuck whatever, and they would probably be right as far as they go with it. Verse 5. Anyhow, I announced in the sleep world to whomever was there that I was bored and wished that they would change the tape. I received an answer in a sort of stewardess voice, only this one needed more PR training because she whined a bit. We're only trying to entertain you. They changed the tape. It was much better. No footnotes, really, except for, I'm sure if he had been writing in 2017 rather than 1976, he would have said flight attendant rather than stewardess. Our guest tonight is an acute and lifelong visionary artist. He has intensively pursued ways of discovering and translating mystical insight into visual art. And so, without further ado, let's get to that interview, shall we? Greetings, Frater. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast.
Greetings, brother. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, wonderful. Just planning a day of a painting vigil or painting marathon.
Nice. Yeah, I saw the one you've been working on.
Oh, well, which one?
Or at least
was
the one
that?
you posted.
The peacock?
Yeah, that one. Is that an older one?
Yeah, that's from last year.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah, I finished that. At the end of last year, Feathered Pearl. Right now I'm working on a painting from a vision I had in Yosemite National Park in California.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Often when I have an opportunity to, more or less hike in a natural environment, I strive to move or let go of myself to be in a Zen state. Mm-hmm. And I find that the more empty of myself, or empty of thoughts and emotions I am, less obstacles there are that clutter my clear vision,
Yeah.
or third eye vision, whatever. So like, particularly in the last 17 years, I've been developing that ability. And so in like the context of hiking through nature, going in a Zen state, and then my, ability, or our ability to see more clearly is revealed, and for instance the energies, the energy network that's normally filtered out by our cultural and biological perceptual prejudices are out of the way. So see energies, for instance, and find that everything, whether sound or the wind, a particular way a leaf moves, and when it does, the composition of what you see is just pregnant with meaning. Because one of my primary insights in my development was that life we are literally in a conversation with the cosmos. We are a part of a hyper-organism, or absolutely everything is meaningful, no matter how large or small, is profoundly meaningful and a gateway to gnosis. Tapping into being without obstacles, linked up to knowing everything, because you're linked up to the collective consciousness.
Yeah. How cool.
Yeah.
So you have a painting, like you have a training, like a background in. Did you go to school for that?
Yes. Well,
combined with the site, I mean, it's a great combination. Like being able to bring a psychedelic state, for instance, into something where I can look at it and go, oh yeah, I think I had a very similar experience once on a lot of mushrooms. I know where that is, kind of,
Yeah, totally. Well, I've always explicitly been an artist since I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was like, my distinct talent, and almost like therapy, because, even reflecting on how it was for me as a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, I was drawn to it for many reasons. One being it was, felt wonderful and therapeutic because the boundary between inside and outside dissolved, where, the inner met the outer in a form of expression.
Yeah.
So that was always my, talent. And then when I was a teenager, when I was basically like 15, I had the beginning of a series of initiations.
Mm-hmm.
One like significant one that has been a life shaper was a concussion I got from playing soccer, and head injury. It it gave me like constant headaches and some memory problems for a while. But the significant thing was that I started seeing energies immediately, pretty much immediately afterwards. Like energies in the sense of energies swimming in the environment as if they're there.
Yeah.
Like auras, but not just around people, around everything. Energies like snake-like tendrils slithering across the floor and up walls, etc. All sorts. And so I made sense of this primarily because I knew that my optic nerves suffered trauma. They were jarred very much by this concussion, and they were damaged. And the optic nerves is the first biological filtering mechanism in the body, because our nervous systems act more so like reducing valves and translators.
Yeah.
Of the information that we're taking in. And so by my optic nerve filters being damaged, less was being filtered out.
Oh, I see.
And so I was able to perceive these energies. And I knew that they weren't, more or less, rationally knew they weren't, hallucinations per se, because they behaved and moved in 3D space.
Yeah.
Like they weren't just, stickered on or stuck on by my imagination, like 2D pictures, but like say for instance, observing someone's aura and looking at the forms in it. If their body rotated, well, simultaneously those forms would rotate as 3D forms, just like their body. So, like, I don't know. I don't think my imagination could hallucinate that immediately.
Yeah.
So like, rationally is, Occam's razor said that, well, yeah, it's probably real.
Yeah, my dad had a similar thing where he got in a concussion, or he had a concussion in a car accident, and at the time he was 19 and Christian Scientist, so he didn't see a doctor about it. But his left hand shook violently for the rest of his life, and he was left-handed, which made for some interesting handwriting, and apparently he was psychic after that. The other thing that what you were saying reminded me of was when I first smoked DMT. After I came back from the other place, and I looked around, I was in a house that was natural wood, and the wood, the patterns on the wood were flowing up the walls, and in a way that was tracing the contours of the 3D space, and the person I was with at the time had these purple lights that were moving up her spine and going down the front and making an arrow. And she saw them too. And that was another thing that was kind of interesting. But I got the distinct feeling that what I had, for one thing, the plants were speaking to me. The plants were very much like, oh, you finally notice us. Like I noticed them when I was 1 or 2, and then at a certain point I bought into this idea that, oh, well, those are just trees. That's not as interesting as Atari. And but I came back to, oh, hi, sorry to have been ignoring you all this time. And not only that, but the wood in the house was alive too. So it wasn't like, oh, well, that's dead wood and that's living wood. It was the house was alive too. It was pretty profound.
Yeah, profound animism. Everything is alive.
Yeah.
Everything is energy, and we perceive it in a certain way because of its inherent structure, but also the way we've evolved biologically and culturally.
Yeah.
Things are clothed by our by the vocabulary of our belief systems.
Yeah. And then underneath that is us as the human organism, surviving and needing to take for granted anything that isn't directly related to our survival. And so hence those energies that are there, we're tuned out of because they're not necessary. Like, it was what you were saying reminded me of Aldous Huxley, Doors of Perception, when he was talking about how the senses filter out, so that we get all this stuff in the retina takes in more than what ends up getting transmitted through the optic nerve and all of that, and probably that gets filtered even more once it's being processed in the brain.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm back to answering your question regarding school.
Oh, yeah.
So I had these series of initiations. First the concussion, and then I started smoking cannabis, and started thinking about things differently, alternatively. Had the internet, started reading lots of books, particularly books regarding mind expansion in some way.
Yeah.
Socio-political, ecological concerns, spirituality, and discovered psychedelics. And I was temporarily expelled from my high school because people were drinking lots of Robitussin. So in my alternative rationale of benevolence, I was like, well, I'm going to give them a healthy alternative. So I started giving people Hawaiian baby woodrose seeds, which has lysergic acid amides, natural occurring equivalent to, close relative to LSD.
Right.
So anyway, someone ratted me out for that. And they found a Swiss Army knife in my bag, which they interpreted as some sort of gang weapon. Though I used it to file my nails on the school bus. Anyway, being temporarily expelled from high school gave me tons of extra time to work on my art, and so I was able to develop a portfolio that got me into one of the 2 top art schools in the U.S.
Oh, great.
On the second biggest scholarship. And so...
Which school was that?
The Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore.
Okay.
And so, I 4 years there, got a bachelor's in illustration, and then I went to the Massachusetts College of Art, got a master's of fine arts in painting. So that was 6 total years of schooling. I've had like 60 teachers or something.
How cool.
But I'd say only 1 or 2 were particularly helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So in general too, like artists who ask me regarding school, I personally do not recommend it in the least if it's going to cost much money.
Yeah.
What is the smart thing to do is to seek out an artist who can teach you, that's doing something, who is doing something that you want to do.
Yeah. If you don't mind my asking, who were those 2 teachers?
there there was one there was one academic teacher that was really cool, but the two actual visual artist teachers that were very helpful were Jose Villarrubia,
Mm-hmm.
who's worked with Alan Moore.
Okay.
Who you might know. He's the super famous
He's
comic.
popularized chaos sigil magic.
Yeah, him and Grant Morrison.
Right.
Yeah. Alan Moore's a super famous comic author and
Has a great beard.
Just yeah. So Jose Villarrubia, but Susan Waters Eller, who's just my model for what a great teacher is.
How cool.
Yeah. So 6 years of schooling stuff, and then after that, started traveling for opportunities and making lots of artwork, and then going to festivals. I discovered. Early on with I discovered the artist Alex Gray,
Mm-hmm.
who back in 2001, alongside the band Tool's Lateralis album.
Oh yeah.
Which I still consider to be the greatest album ever made. I'm biased. Discovered his work, and he was like, "Wow, he's doing what I more or less something very similar to what I want to do."
Mm-hmm.
As an archetype. And then many years later, I discovered that there was a visionary psychedelic spiritual transformational culture scene. And so started going to these festivals, and one brought me to Australia, and eventually, soon thereafter, moved here, and now stay here because I have a daughter.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my daughter, Maya Lily, is 4 years old.
How sweet. I remember when Temple of Visions came on the scene. It was first as a cubicle at the Hive, and then at what they took over in Fusion, the place next door, and seeing some of your work there. I think I bought your Magdalene. I bought a print from there.
Oh, wow.
Back in 2006. Or no, 2009, I think it was by then.
Yeah.
Something
wow.
like that.
Oh, okay. I had no idea you were in LA. Where are you now?
I'm in LA.
Oh.
but in less than 2 weeks, I'm going to be in South Africa, and then after that, Nepal. So I'm going to be heading over there. But
what's bringing you to Nepal?
Well, basically, it being kind of where Buddha and Shiva and Padmasambhava all kind of came from. I feel like that's the place where I want to start, and so it's sort of a pilgrimage of sorts. I'm going to go to where the Buddha was born, but at the same time, kind of seeing the places where Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal went, so kind of I'm simultaneously walking in the 8th century and the 6th century BC on that one. Just because my dad had a strong interest in Tibetan Tantric Yoga and taught me a bit when I was growing up. So I ended up diving into Western stuff as a teenager after he died, and intending to eventually dive into the Tibetan, but it took me longer than I had anticipated to finish what I was doing in the Western path. But so part of that is there's a group of people in South Africa called the Gnostic Church of the Black Sun Ku, and they study a variety of mysteries, but with Africa at the center. And so I'm going in the spirit of bringing the mysteries that were kind of taken from Africa back to Africa, teaching, kind of the Egyptology by way of Hermetic Kabbalah and Golden Dawn type stuff. But that actually reminds me of one thing I wanted to ask you about specifically, because actually this coming Friday I'm going to be doing a class where part of it is Introduction to the Vault of the Adepti, and I really appreciated your illustration called Lamb, and it seemed to be a very I was just wondering what you can tell me about what went into that, the room that he was in at the time, because I don't know actually that much about Crowley himself. I'm more of the school that he came from, but of course the symbolism of the room that he was in was very familiar to me.
Okay. Well, let's see. That was an experience 13 years ago, and yeah, I made that digital painting, almost 13 years ago. Yeah, it was, it was a ceremonial, a loose ceremonial magical ritual combined with some Kundalini meditation. That I did in my apartment in Baltimore. So the room itself is the room that I was in.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. It was a renovated Victorian.
Oh, wow.
Like smoke room / ballroom. So I had like fantastically, cool, moody plasterwork. The room was, the room that I was in having the experience.
So it had those drawers on the walls?
Yeah, they're like, window blinds things.
How interesting.
Yeah, and so on one side is, the lunar and the other solar, and the me being in the middle way, and having an experience of oneness in the sense of the inside being the outside, and the energy from the environment flowing into my form and my form into the environment. My energy body being activated. So was
frankly, the head above your head yours?
I could say no, but
maybe.
I can't rule that out.
Interesting.
Lamb. Okay, so you're probably familiar with
only peripherally. I've heard people make jokes about it, but I'm not in on the joke. I know that before there were people seeing that gray alien, and before there was, it in movies, there was Lamb, which was something that Crowley had invoked from maybe another dimension. But now that, some people theorize that now that he's invoked it, now the gate's open, and that's why these flying saucers are popping through all the time, and why everybody's seeing it now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, it's been a fascination of mine because, not only is it very intriguing, and I found some profound correspondences, but I've had personal experiences that were very curious. Okay, so back to the experience. The memory's not totally clear. I don't think I implicitly intended to conjure Lamb. but I had the sense of this, um, being that looks like a gray alien, present in the space around me, and particularly above me, of a questionable presence or intention. Questionable more in the sense of like being vacant, vacant of feeling.
Yeah.
And its presence being questionable as to what it was doing. Like, for instance, in the picture, it kind of looks like the energy from my like crown chakra or third eye is going into its mouth. Because yeah, well, that relates to other things that I think relates to the being of Lamb. I think it feeds on raised energy, which brings a whole nother like subject, which I think is of prime significance to humanity, which is the ecology of energy and entities. But like Lamb, this being that Crowley, somehow invoked and illustrated, which he also articulated was like Tibet, the name being Tibetan for the way, and afterwards there's this exponential occurrence in people's experience, personally and of course culturally, because it increasingly became part of the vernacular, vocabulary of like aliens and spaceships. But also, this is interesting. Well, okay. Back to my personal experiences. Many times in which I was in a mind-revealed space, psychedelic space, I experienced gray alien-appearing beings. Whether they seemed more akin to elves or trolls, or more explicitly, astral or celestial beings. So they're quite common to my experience, without any desire for that to be an experience.
Yeah.
Uncalled for. and it was never an obsession of mine at all. And also related to this character of Lamb is, I started doing like research into fetal development, because I felt it was quite obvious that the way in which we develop, early on in the first times of our psychic imprinting, would be very significant. So I looked into fetal development and discovered that at precisely 49 days from conception, when technically it's the first day that the entity is considered a fetus, not an embryo. It's more or less the first time in which it has a humanoid form explicitly. We all look very much like a gray alien, like Lamb. This is the point at which, just before when eyelids form. So at 49 days, there's big black almond eyes, tiny nose, tiny mouth, giant head.
How interesting.
Tiny ears, super similar. That's when the pineal gland is discernible and DMT floods the brain and body. That's when gender differentiates, when the fetus is either stays female or becomes male. And other things. And also in some ancient forms of, or bodies of knowledge of Buddhism, that's when the soul, precisely then is when the soul incarnates into the body at 49 days. So taking this into consideration, I'm just like, okay, if that's true, then, and if the, spiritual form of us has any semblance of sight, then our original face of who we are in bodily form is a gray alien, is Lamb.
Very interesting.
And then taking into consideration Carl Jung's interpretation of UFOs anyway. UFOs are like a mandala representing the wholeness of self. So and also a spaceship, a typical circular spaceship is very much like the placenta, which is kind of like the direct mother ship for us, because it's we receive nutrition from the mother via the placenta spaceship. And the nutrition gets into us, into our sacral, our emotions, our emotional energy, via the spaceship's ray, the ray that comes down to abduct, which is the umbilical cord from the placenta that connects to us.
Until that day that they knocked our Tower of Babel down, and now we have to make ourselves chicken McNuggets. I don't know.
Please explain.
My dad he was into this idea, and he didn't make it up, but he was explaining to me that there were these transdimensional beings that would get into our space by way of the Sirius system, but they were from somewhere else, and that they wanted our gold, probably. That there used to be a lot more gold on Earth, but they needed to sprinkle it into their atmosphere to stay alive or something. And so
it sounds like the Anunnaki from Nibiru.
Oh, maybe. But basically, they tried to breed all of these different things that could do it because they didn't like our gravity, so they were crossbreeding themselves with animals, and they ended up creating all the demons, and then they hid them under the earth, and created mankind out of a hominid, a lion, and themselves, and then they created the Greys out of birds, themselves with birds, and then they were just They could give a crap about us or not. I think that they live on the other side of the moon or inside the moon or something, and they just check in on us and report back, and they have their instructions. So it's kind of like, yeah, emotionless. Like if they get the instruction to wipe us out, they'll do it without a second thought. But if they get the instruction to like give us, you know, fusion, they'll do that too. At least, so this was his whole, you know.
Oh, you serious?
Yeah, he would go on and on about it. And back in the 80s, he was telling me about December 12th, 2012, and he thought it was going to be an ice age, that's what was going to happen. But so far, so good on that one.
Well, yeah, I remember thinking with some seriousness.
Yeah.
2012, because there seemed to be a lot of evidence to think it's at least of some significance.
Yeah. Very interesting. There was one, you had the Sigillium de Amet in the sky over a rainbow. Do you remember that one? There was a hand. Maybe I'm thinking of two things.
I'm talking about Lamb again, because I had the...
Oh, Lamb. Yeah, we were talking about Lamb.
They met on the ceiling of Lamb.
But that's the same one. Oh, there was another one that there was a...
But over the rainbow...
Right.
And then that one is fulfillment. Which is from the perspective of the Galactic Mother. So from her eyes, you're looking down. She's looking down at her pregnant belly, and inside is the Earth, and she's pregnant with the Earth, sitting on the cosmic shore, aligned with the sun. A Rosicrucian, Rosy Cross.
Oh yeah.
Emblazoned sun. So Earth aligned with the sun, aligned with the center of the galaxy at the top, and at the top, over my depiction of this kind of spaceship galaxy is the Sigillium de Amet.
Yeah. Is it all right if I use that one for the image for this episode?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever you want.
What can you tell me about that one?
Fulfillment?
Yeah, the what was going on? How did it come about? Or whatever you want to share about it. I'm just interested in knowing kind of background story. Because I've known the image, I've had it in my head for a long time. You know, when I think about cool psychedelic images, I mean, especially because not very many psychedelic artists, you don't see Alex Gray throwing, John Dee symbols into his work. But I mean, I can also appreciate moving beyond it, because it's sort of like it can be a glass ceiling at a certain point where like, oh, these are tools that I can use to get beyond. But then if you don't let go of the tools, you'll never get beyond. You'll just kind of get stuck
exactly. They're just simply tools.
Yeah.
Just vocabularies to get you someplace.
To communicate even just with other humans.
Yeah, precisely. And, good tools are that which, are practical and useful because they link up with the cosmos, because they, fit into the structure of the cosmos.
Yeah.
Like you need a Phillips head to do a cross screw.
Yeah. Yeah, the flower of life is like once you stare at it long enough, you're like, okay, this is pretty universal. Like anyone with a compass could come up with this.
Yeah, exactly. So universal.
Yeah.
But then that's like one. That's a prime example of a symbol that, like, me as an artist, I have somewhat of not a prejudice, but an artistic desire to use it very tastefully,
right,
and uniquely, differently, subtly, because it's become so popularized and overused.
Yeah.
I mean, like a crutch.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, yeah, fulfillment. Yeah, as I was saying, it's from the perspective of the Galactic Mother, giving birth to the Earth, aligned with on the cosmic shore, aligned with the sun, which is aligned with the center of the galaxy, and over the center of the galaxy, which has the sign of truth of God over it, the Siculum Dei Emit, over the center of the galaxy, and let's see, and in the center of the Earth, and on her hand is a kind of form of the Eye of Horus that I painted, but not based on the Eye of Horus. But I was looking at NASA images of the center of the galaxy, and I, in particular, at the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy.
Yeah.
There's this.
And those stars quickly swirling around the drain.
Yeah. There's this energy nexus called Sagittarius A, which shoots out a potent beam of energy that circumambulates around the galaxy every 26,000 years.
Wow.
And very curiously, in Sagittarius A, there is an energy form that looks like an Eye of Horus that shoots out this energy beam that hypothetically catalyzes evolution.
I can't help thinking about Sagittarius as the temperance path connecting Yesod with Tiferet, and the beams of light shooting out being like the arrows, and then right there at Sagittarius A is the very tip of the arrow of Sagittarius. It's a trip.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it does. It shoots an arrow of energy catalyzing awakening.
And Sagittarius, I see or I perceive that it makes sense that it looks like an eye.
Right. And yeah, it does. It looks like the closest similarity I come up with is it looks like an Eye of Horus.
Yeah. How cool. Which, of course, if you slice a brain in half, then you see the pineal and the pituitary look like an Eye of Horus.
In the hypothalamus.
And they were slicing brains in half in ancient Egypt. So they probably knew that.
Well, sure. Yeah. In Egypt, there was esoteric anatomy.
Yeah.
Was a science, studying the cosmos by studying the body. So that factors in the painting too, because it's about the birth of the Earth in alignment with the sun, which is a medium between us and the rest of the cosmos. And the birth of the Earth being, more or less next stage of evolution.
Wow. Yeah, I was just thinking the moon orbits the Earth, orbits the sun, orbits the black hole at the center of the galaxy.
Yes. Yep.
Wow. I've had a recurring experience in a psychedelic state, and I've seen, especially in Alex Gray paintings, it's part of me is like, well, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Was I hallucinating about Alex Gray paintings, or is this a place? It's the where you're surrounded by eyes, but straight up is white light, and they talk about Azrael, the archangel of death, having wings covered in eyes. And I've thought of the veil, the veil the veil of illusion, that separates the illusion of the finite or the separate self from the infinite, and and that's the one that has all the eyes on it. And I don't know. I mean, I've really gone deep into this on different substances, and there was one point where I felt like it was that the superego was the many eyes on this veil, that I knew what they were all thinking, and they all wanted me to behave this way and not that way, and it's just really interesting stuff. Do you have any thoughts about what I just was rambling about?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well,
the place of many eyes.
Yeah. When you said they wanted you to behave in a certain way.
Yeah, like they were my ancestors.
Oh, okay. So
they were looking in on me for their own reasons. I mean, in this particular one, that was it was mushrooms as opposed to different experiences.
Yeah. So they wanted you to behave in a way that was more ethical and
more like them. But I had my dad was at that time, it was like there was a cacophony of ideas about opinions about me, but it was when I looked at them, it was as if it were the voices of my ancestors, and at a certain point I had to step in and explain that I'm my father's son also, not just the great grandson of these Puritan types. You know what I mean? And to try to show them that it's all part of the greater good, that Jesus is more than just Bible thumping, and all of that, like try to reconcile all these threads in my own psyche, I guess, or in my subconscious.
Okay, so these ancestors weren't necessarily, wise, but they were ancestors as in
ghosts.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Ghosts that you're connected to, and their presence as eyes. Do you think that they were the actual
ancestors?
Souls?
I was thinking
or more of the
my projection.
Shells?
I think that they're probably, in my most skeptical place, I think that they're created by me, and that basically I'm taking the experience of having had, both my parents passed away and all my grandparents, so I knew two of my grandparents and both of my parents, and so, but then I have all of the pictures, so I inherited, all the photos, and so I have generations and generations of these black and white photos, and I can tell the story. I'm the only person who knows the life stories of these people, so the only place they exist really in the world is in my head and my ability to tell stories about them. And so when I got into a deep psychedelic state, I felt like they were looking at me from what I would imagine to be their point of view, given what I know about their lives. But if I really was connecting with their souls, I'm sure that they would be able to see beyond these sort of surface things.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's more like a superego phenomenon, like my own projection of what I think society wants, or something.
Yeah. Whether it might be a bit more than that. Maybe I'm saying maybe more than just your idea of them, but it's the ideas of them, like ideas as inherently empty, devoid of meaning, being the clephotic shells of their souls.
Yeah.
What's cast off as they passed on.
Right.
And being the static ghosts, left behind as imprints in our continuum.
It's like a haunting, or like some kind of possession.
So
on one hand, it's like, how we can say, I got this trait from my dad. Oh, and he got it from his dad. So it's maybe in that state, I was perceiving kind of, in an overwhelming. It was a little overwhelming at the time, but I was perceiving in depth, like all all of the ways in which my mannerisms and my ways of thinking come from that which was passed down directly from my ancestors. And then there was a sense of like wanting to break out, wanting to,
Yes.
not be the sum total of that. And the interesting thing that happened was once I got through it and I was starting to come down and I started describing it to the person I was with, and I said that I said my great grandmother Grace, who I've never met, was being really judgmental, and then suddenly I heard her voice in my head say, "I didn't know you could hear me," and she was really like, "I'm so sorry. If I'd known that you could hear me, I wouldn't have been. I thought I was just having those thoughts privately," and so then it got really interesting at that point. And then I actually counterintuitively, because I was very anti-grid, anti-everything that, was indirectly contributing to, wars in other countries. And I still am, of course, but that was where my focus was. It was 2011, Occupy was going strong. And then on 11/11/11, I took this heroic dose. And at the end of it, I opened up a beer and I said, thanks to God and to my ancestors for developing beer and cans and mass production so that I can open this beer right now and enjoy it by the fire, and it was just like talking about everything being connected. Like I was able to kind of go there and one of the things that kind of clicked for me was the idea that our blood uses iron to transport oxygen to our brain, and also we, in our scale, use iron to make trucks to move iron cans of beer for me to open up by the fire, and it was like, these things aren't necessarily like, what we call unnatural is a little bit arbitrary, and I like that line from Love and Rockets.
You cannot go against nature, because when you do, go against nature, it's part of nature too.
Yeah, right. It's all nature.
It's all the same thing. Okay, I'm gonna dub that in.
Well, sure. We are an expression of nature, so we may be a
weird one. Yeah, we're coming up with AI. Like turtles didn't do that. Plants didn't do that. But plants might already be an AI, but it wouldn't be artificial, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, we are nature, and we kind of discover that no matter kind of what we do, nature speaks through us.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, when you see ants doing the same things, like when we're using computer models to figure out the best way to move things around, move goods and services, and then it ends up we're doing exactly the same thing that insects do.
Yeah,
just doing it with computers instead of
Yep.
scent or something.
Just a higher extrapolation of ants.
Yeah. What a trip. Well, is there anything?
Regarding the eyes thing, that experience of mine that sounds similar to what you were describing was one time I smoked some, not very much, but a little bit of DMT, and became aware, perceived a what seemed to be the inside of my auric egg, which was my auric egg structure was like a you know, countlessly faceted crystal, each facet being like an eye or a window through which a particular entity or hypothetically ancestor observed what was going on inside the auric egg, and I had a strong sense that these beings looking through the window facet eyes into my world within the egg, they had an influence on how the world was shaped. If not for myself, at least for other people, other beings in the world, like as if they observed in order to make observations, to record and learn, I guess.
Yeah.
And they had an influence on events.
How
and so
interesting.
and so I forget exactly what, but I basically pleaded with them very tearfully to I'm not sure what, basically to forgive, and to love, and everyone just wants to be healthy and happy. And I was left with a very positive feeling regarding that, and of course profound. But yeah, it's like there's ghosts, there's watchers that influence events by observing.
It makes me think of a TV show and people commenting on a YouTube channel for you know what I mean, like it influences the writers somehow, like consciously or unconsciously. They change the direction that the show's going because the fans wanted it a certain way. Like like if there's enough watchers that are all kind of like wanting it to go a certain direction. That makes me think of the hungry ghosts in Vajrayana Buddhism, where if you have someone that wants rage, or you have someone that wants lust, or a ghost that just wants to thrive on the feeling of you eating a hamburger, and they it didn't satisfy them because they didn't get to really experience it, so they make you have another one. It's like a bad situation.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like writers changing the direction of the show based on what it seems that the fans, the audience, wants.
So people live their lives based on what they think the eyes want, or what they think that other people's expectations, or maybe even the watchers.
Yeah, energy flows where attention goes.
Yeah.
And the subject of hungry ghosts. Yes. It's become kind of pretty clear to me from personal observational experience and just research of wisdom, Gnostic, shamanic traditions regarding an invisible ecology of energy and entities, that we are surrounded by locally and non-locally connected, potentially, to entities that feed on energy.
Yeah.
I mean, they a whole spectrum, whether symbiotic and give as much or more than they take, that's beneficial, or parasitic, or at least in the sense of destructive, where these entities have evolved over our evolutionary development as relatively conscious beings, to catalyze in us what will catalyze from within us their food source,
right,
that they've learned to like consuming.
So that kind of ties it back to the lamb with the light from the third eye going into its mouth.
Yeah.
So would that be the light of a third eye that's been activated by ceremonial magic and psychedelics specifically, or something else?
Sure.
Maybe.
Sure.
Maybe the most awake, alert, enlightened people. It's interesting. Have you read Shuryangama Sutra? Volume 8. I recited it in episode 77 of this podcast. It's pretty fun, but it's like 3 hours. But there's a.
Cool. I will have to look it up. It doesn't ring a bell right now.
There's it's about the interaction of different kinds of demons with people who have prematurely decided that they are sages and their students. And so basically when someone is meditating and they reach a certain level of stillness, they use a certain kind of language. I forget the word. But then they start to desire. They start to have a little bit of a desire for immortality or great wealth, or to be the wisest person in the world. Whatever it is that they're the little thing that creeps in with alongside their genuine thirst for peace and the meditative state. And so once that happens, then a demon from the heavens sees that opportunity, and it quickly grabs one of these idiots that have decided that they're a sage. But then there's a different section where it talks about for the people who are really getting somewhere, and it says, okay, so when you get to the place where you see all the rainbows and you see the many thousands of Buddhas and all the Buddha lands and you see the beautiful palaces, that's called such and such. It doesn't mean you're a sage. And then the next one is when you realize that every time you take a step you're killing life, and that life is precious, and that it makes you weep. That's a beautiful state. It'll pass. You're not a sage now. And it just keeps going through all of these different states. And it says, if you think you're a sage, you'll be vulnerable to the demon's influence. And then, like in the next part of it, it's talking about, when this kind of student comes along, a demon will grab one of these idiots who think they're a sage prematurely and come running in and interpret the Dharma with the slant that the student is hungry for. And in the end, the demon will get bored and leave, and both the teacher and the student will be in trouble with the law. It's this 8th century Mahayana text. It's really, it says a lot. I mean, it's all very fantastical, and the situations.
Oh, it's fantastic.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I am for sure going to be listening to that.
Yeah.
I guess today while I paint.
Nice. My intro's a bit long, but once you get into it, I did music. It took me forever to do that one. So there's a lot of music and, connected to what's being said. I'll send you the link when we're done here.
Oh, thanks. Cool.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's why it's always good to have a good sense of humor.
Yeah.
and some degree of cynicism and making fun of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a special kind of humility. Like, not that contrived humility that religious people put on in front of people. Look how humble I am in these robes, you know. But like the genuine humility of being able to laugh at yourself because you're a silly monkey, and not only that, but it's a crazy universe, and we walk and the universe moves around this monkey in the middle, and we take it for granted all the time. We think that's normal, and we should be upset because we're not getting enough attention from someone we like or whatever it is, you know, like that we get all caught up in and completely take for granted the endless fractal miraculous existence that's all around us.
Yep. Yeah. Well.
Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. I'm not speaking for everyone, I guess.
No, it certainly is not just you. You're not alone. We're all one.
Well, I definitely love your work. I remember, okay, so the Magdalene, that was the mother of your child, right?
No,
Okay, different person.
Yeah, that's more of just a third eye vision.
Oh wow. Okay.
Not based on a person. If anything, it's based on my anima.
How cool. Yeah, I had a profound experience with mine a few months ago. She was dressed up like Red Tara. It's interesting.
Oh.
I mean, that's the way that I put it. I've been praying to Red Tara, and then I was in a psychedelic experience where kind of my other half showed up, and it was, and she looked like me, so it was like she was my age, she was my, you know, like she looked like she could be a cousin or something, but she was dressed in the clothes of Red Tara. I assume if I were to meet Red Tara, she'd look like she was from, you know, Nepal or something, Tibet, but maybe those are just assumptions.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Magdalene was more a third eye vision. You know, of the, you know, goddess archetype. She is in a very personal form, but she is form itself. So, like, you know, in that painting, you see that, you know, you see the figure, but you see her. She doesn't have feet because her figure is flows from the toroidal space that surrounds her.
Yeah.
Which is has a toroidal apple energy flow, and is a tapestry of stars.
Yeah. Making that beautiful pattern.
Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me. I'm just trying to visualize it.
Yeah.
How cool. Do you have a website, right?
Yeah. AdamScottMiller.com.
You know what infuriates me is when I see your work used without credit for people that are selling some kind of new age bullshit.
Oh, okay. I
see that too often. Because you're one of the top, you know, like 4 or 5 of that kind of artists that people would want to steal a picture from. And I'm like, it's like, there's Amanda Sage, there's Luke Brown I see sometimes out there. And then there's the one other guy, I forget his name. He had the one with the woman on the left side of the screen, and I thought it was yours, but then I looked it up and it turned out it was someone else, and I've forgotten his name. But yeah, sometimes I'll just see like, come to our workshop and learn about the different levels of such and such, and it's like the only reason that anybody would click on that is because of the art, and it's like it'd be nice
and then they don't give credit.
Yeah,
just what?
It's obnoxious. So I'll comment and I'll say, you know, oh, that's a very nice Adam Scott Miller you got there, you know.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Oh no, yeah, it's kind of a little nauseating, just the hypocrisy of advertising integrity and, spiritual altruistic principles, but then doing things without permission or credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I paint oil paintings for the most part, digital paintings occasionally. If it's a commission job, so I choose to digitally paint based on how much time I have to do something. But yeah, I'm available for commissions, whether for personal usage or for jobs for albums or books, etc. And I occasionally teach workshops. Like my next workshop is at a eco retreat in Australia called Paradise One. I'll be teaching a 10-day workshop with Chris Dyer, who's a lovely guy, and the official visionary skateboard artist or graffiti artist.
Nice.
Yeah, and on my website, people can order original artwork and artwork reproductions by emailing me, and on each artwork's page is the various print options.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for being our guest on the Esoterinerd podcast.
Thank you, Frater. It's a pleasure talking with a fellow esoteric nerd.
Likewise. And if I end up in Australia, I'll definitely hit you up. I don't know where I'm going to land or where, because I'm going to be in Nepal, then Bhutan, and then either India or China. I want to get into Tibet. But then people in Serbia want me to visit, and Sweden. And so I think I might just kind of move slowly in some direction or other. And so who knows? I have cousins in New Zealand, so I might end up in the neighborhood.
Ah, fantastic. Yeah, please do. And I'll be sure to connect with you in person next time I'm in LA.
Sounds good if I ever end up back here.
Oh, if you ever do.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to land in the end, but yeah, we'll see.
Great. Cool. And by the way, to anyone who might be interested in esoteric artwork, I'd love to be commissioned to do esoteric subject matter.
Nice.
Particularly of an esoterically nerdy style.
You hear that, everybody? Cool. Yeah, definitely. I hope that somebody hears this, gets connected with you, and I look forward to seeing that artwork.
Yeah, ditto.
Nice. Cool.
Great talking with you, bro.
Likewise. Have a great day, is it, over there?
Yeah.
Okay,
it
cool.
is just about 4 p.m.
Sounds good. I'm going to go to sleep, and then I'll edit this and put it up tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Cool.
All right, much love, bro.
Much love.
Talk to you again.
You too. Bye-bye.
No new tale to tell. No new tale to tell.
Thank you, Adam Scott Miller, for being our guest on the Esoterinerd podcast tonight. Thank you to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofukuin Temple on Mount Koyasan for the music you're hearing right now. Special thanks to Jean-Michel Jarre for the music that I played in the background during Transformations and Footnotes. Special thanks to Tool, whose track Schism played in the background briefly when that album was mentioned. Special thanks to Love and Rockets for the track No New Tale to Tell. And special thanks to you, the Esoterinerd, listening to this podcast. And if you happen to be near Burbank and you're hearing this on the day it comes out or the week it comes out, Part 5, Typhirit, Introduction to the Vault of the Adepti, and so on, will be taking place at the Crooked Path Occult Apothecary on Magnolia Boulevard in Burbank this Friday, November 10th at 8 p.m. It's $20, and hopefully I'll see you there. And the following Thursday, November 17th, I'll be arriving in South Africa. I have a feeling I'll be recording an episode from there, but we'll see. Thank you all for tuning in. Good night. Oh.